Well, Tim, you will find on this podcast, I don't know if you listened to any of it, but it is much more casual than the professionalism of Cinema Spectator and the sense of organization, constant
professionalism,
and all that sort of thing. You end up just getting into the conversation, not even introing the show or anything. So I hope that's okay.
Yeah, no worries.
So what was the question you sent? I don't know if you want to read it out or just explain your whole idea, because that definitely got a lot of thoughts going in my head.
Was this about directors
and their
ideal ages?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right. It was the idea of the ideal. Yeah. Does a director have an ideal age the way an athlete or a musician? Is that even true about musicians? I guess it is pretty generally true, right? Most musicians come in in their 20s.
Well, there's an ideal age for them to die, but
Lord,
it's 27.
Oh, right. That whole thing. But I mean, in terms of their best, do most musicians put out their best music in their 20s? I guess that is. I think there's anyone is there anyone who like comes in hot when they're in their 50s or?
Well, yeah. Some people do have a renaissance, and usually it's like comes from a period of being very successful early on and then kind of having a flat period and then being successful older when they've reshaped themselves. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think when it comes to artists, it's difficult because once you get old, well, here's the thing I like to say about all the punk rockers who turned 40 and then had kids and then stopped being cool and punk anymore. I don't know. To me, sometimes when you become older, you kind of lose the edge. You lose a little bit of the, what makes you fun as a younger artist. Yeah. And I don't know. I think movies maybe. Well, I think there's examples. We could point to examples of it happening both ways. Where Spielberg obviously has actually no, not even Spielberg. I mean, I know you love him, Juzo, in his past decade or whatever. But
he's running hot, man. Yeah.
But someone like Scorsese, who genuinely has had a hot streak since
Goodfellas. The Goodfellas. Come on.
I mean, he's definitely had in the past 10 years, 15 years, he's been killing it, basically every time. So I don't know, someone like him versus someone like Wilder, who, obviously it didn't work out for him in his older.
Yeah, though he did have years. He did do well pretty into middle age, right? I mean, he was in his 50s when he was doing a lot of those really great, like Sunset Boulevard and The Apartment. But before we get into too many examples, Tim, just tell me about what your perspective on this whole thing is. Where are you coming from about this?
Yeah, I don't think I had a specific. There's more observation. I think I was thinking how it's. Once you lose that peak of your creativity skills, it's hard to ever reach it again. Mm-hmm. And at that point it becomes quantity over quality. I'm not sure if people try to recreate their big masterpiece, or is that just, they just keep on moving towards something else?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think there are definitely directors who try to recreate their masterpiece. I mean, for sure. I think Billy Wilder is one of those examples.
Yeah.
I don't know though, because I think this is an argument that Tarantino has been making basically for the past 5 years or whatever. So he's saying I want to go out with being still on my hot streak. I mean, is that fair, I guess, of him? I think fair enough, although he has such a love for the craft that it's hard to convince me that he ever is going to truly give it up in a firm way.
Yeah. The thing about him is he is kind of right. And he is so well versed in film history. I'm sure he can think of, because most directors, 99% of directors, they have a period of where they're really great. And part of what I was also want to talk about, in addition to like what that period is what sets apart directors who are able to transcend that and continue to be great for decades and decades. Like what is it that they do differently? And so Tarantino probably is looking at all these, great, journeyman directors that he grew up loving and seeing how they petered out. But on the other hand, I think he's wrong about himself. Like, I think he is the exception or he is one of the exceptions. And I don't see him petering out at all. I mean, he is working as good as he's ever done, at least in his last movie, I thought. I don't know. Tim, did you like Once Upon a Time?
Yeah, it was weird at first, and then it took me some time, and then earlier this year I rewatched it, and more of the brilliance or the technical aspect to it, I realized it more this time.
Yeah, it took me a few runs to get it too, but certainly, yeah, a lot of people. I mean, like, it's definitely older than 20s. Most directors don't even. A lot of directors start when they're in their 30s, and now
in their 30s,
it seems like maybe even older in some cases. I mean, I 35 is young for a director. I would say it's not like musicians. A lot of times it's 19 or 20. If you do your first movie at 19, that's pretty. I can only think of one guy who did Xavier Dolan. I think is the only person I can think of who. Quinn Shepard also the only ones I can think of. But it seems to be, if I was making a very broad generalization, I would say it's people in their 30s seem to be at their hottest. And definitely if we're talking more broadly, 30s to up until 60, maybe. I think 60 is most general diminishing returns. But again, there's like so many exceptions. And of course I can think of some people who, weren't great until, some people started when they're 40 and they weren't great until they're 60. And, there's all sorts of examples of that, but that probably is the exception, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it used to be much different back in, in like the 50s and 60s. I think there was kind of a hard cap and probably imposed by the studios in a lot of ways.
Right.
And I think a lot of directors, they would be given, I mean, people who are such big legacies, when in their time, they would be given, small character pieces and like little tiny budget movies to kind of just put them in the corner and have them, play with their little toys as old guys. So I don't know. I think it's hard too, because now that we're looking at a totally different type of Hollywood, right? Where the people who are involved in a lot of these movies are generally older, and especially I think we're getting to the end, and hopefully not really, but knock on wood, I think we're getting to the end of the last sort of the last leg of the auteurs in the classic sense, with people like Scorsese and
certainly auteurs working on that kind of scale.
Yeah,
there are younger directors, but they're not going to. I don't know if they're ever going to see someone like get the make a Heaven's Gate or an Age of Innocence or some like big period epic or whatever. As
Ridley Scott.
Yeah, Ridley Scott, he's still doing it. But in terms of like young people, I don't see I think Chazelle probably is one of the only ones. I think Jordan Peele, especially if his next movie is a big hit, he probably is hitting that range. But there are very few people who are.
And Nolan, I think, obviously has that.
Right, but he's over 50.
He's kind of one of the last ones who has that amount of clout. And I would say, he kind of struggled in there a little bit, but Villeneuve has kind of proven himself to be at least very capable of a craftsman in terms of, I mean, not necessarily raking in the dough, but definitely making movies that are worth seeing. And I think I don't know that he has that much clout in terms of, he can make whatever he wants. I don't think that's the case. But he's probably getting there. And I think Dune definitely helped him in that regard. But I mean, all that to say is these directors who are, the classic auteurs who are kind of the only ones left, are now in their 70s and 80s. And many of them are still making movies and still making some of their best movies today. So that's also surprising to me, is that even though there's a stark difference between the movies that you've seen from like the end of like John Ford or like the end of Wilder, like, kind of the trail off, taper, or direct some smaller movies and then retire. We're not really seeing that anymore.
Well, it also has to do with its movies back then. I would say the vast majority of directors were guns for hire. They were journeyman filmmakers. Yes. Wilder is an exception. Preston Sturges, there's Wells, but for the most part, they were at the mercy of whatever script they were given. Yeah. And so, as you get older, I think, the quality of whatever, and especially if you start to have a few misses, the quality of whatever you get just kind of tends to fluctuate. And it's only if you're someone, at the level of Spielberg or whoever, where you get to have, and talking of directors who don't write their own scripts, get to have that kind of like choice of what they pick. I feel like nowadays the writer director is it more ubiquitous? It's definitely more than back then. I don't know if it's the majority of filmmakers now. Definitely independent filmmakers.
I mean, yes, independents, but at the same time, you have like, a lot of the talent in terms of the directing talent is being funneled into TV, which is the gun for hire. It still works in the same way. It's still kind of similar, but
except they're not even really the auteur though. Cause it's, John Ford directing a script by someone else. He was the boss there, but someone, Andrew Stanton coming in for 2 episodes of Stranger Things, he is not in charge at all. He's just telling him where to put the camera.
The one I can think of that is Noah Hawley from Fargo and Legion.
Okay.
Yeah, he has a pretty distinct style. And then he didn't create either, but he was able to adapt both of them. Mm-hmm. And his style was definitely there.
He's the Fargo guy, you said?
Yeah, the TV show, not the movie.
Fargo, the TV, right. And he directed one movie that didn't do so well, Lucy in the Sky, I think. But he, there's a lot of other, there are probably more examples of TV, but maybe some I'm not even aware. Like, Vince Gilligan, he's probably someone who has that kind of freedom if you make Breaking Bad, you have that sort of thing.
I kind of wonder about him too, because what has he been doing in the last like 3 years?
He has been in the same sandbox.
El Camino.
Yeah. He's been doing Better Call Saul, but
sure.
He hasn't left the universe of Breaking Bad in over a decade. So that'd be an interesting question of what he's going to do. Yeah, we tend to focus on the directors who've found success, but I think for a lot of people, the trajectory is probably, I would use the guy who made Donnie Darko as an example of probably like most people go through, which is like you make a movie, maybe it's not as famous as Donnie Darko, but you like make at least your first or second movie that is beloved and people really like it. And then people want you to make something like that, and then either you keep imitating yourself or you go out too far trying to do something so different that doesn't work. And then he hasn't made a movie in 12 or 13 years, I think.
The guy who made District 9.
District 9, that's another.
Neil Blomkamp.
Yeah. Who just made consistently bad movies since.
Yeah. Now he's doing like DT, like direct to video horror stuff. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
On Shudder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, can I just ask? I want to ask Tim, because I mean, like, I should say this is really the first time I've had a full conversation with Tim, other than briefly on the phone. Who are the guys you dig, and like who for you? When are they at their peak? You think? Because I don't know much about. I mean, I have a sense of your taste in some ways, but I'm curious. Like, who are the guys for you?
Wait to put me on the spot, Juzo. I guess I'm in the middle of transitioning my style, but at one point it was Anderson and all his movies style, I guess, when I was in my teens.
PT or Wes?
Sorry, Wes.
Wes Anderson, right.
And then
or W
Paul W.S. Anderson.
Yeah.
that's Tim's director. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I guess my style, I guess, a little bit as I was exploring. And that's the first thing I found that I liked that was different. Like, oh, I like that. And then I'll base my personality around him. But but then I realized there's more to explore and figure out. But his peak movie is probably Grand Budapest Hotel.
Mm-hmm. Definitely critically speaking. Yeah.
Which was interesting because as he was entering his prime, he took like a weird break, like almost, except the Isle of Dogs.
Right.
He took almost a 7-year break, which I don't know. It seems that's enough time to get you out of the spotlight. Mm-hmm. And when you go, or either it takes you out or it creates more anticipation and just creates so much that it's hard to fulfill it.
He's actually quietly a guy who kind of does have that clout of, not of Nolan. Like he probably can't do a budget like Nolan, but he does get, anyone will work for him and his movies do pretty well. And he's one of the few directors who, if you just ask a person on the street, most people don't know, probably most people don't even know like Denis Villeneuve, but they do know Wes Anderson. Yeah. And certainly his style is, I can see why he'd be an early favorite because it's very, when you're first getting into film, you gravitate towards people where the style is very visible, and of course, probably might not be anyone who's more visible than him.
He's interesting because he's 52 right now. So I would say, in my estimation, he probably hasn't even really cracked his best decade. I think maybe 50 to 60 is where I pin most directors on being like past their early years, kind of honing their, have honed their craft and like, putting out good hits.
Oh, but wait, so you're saying it's 50s, not 30s?
No, I think you're right, Juzo, that lots of directors make one movie that is good in their 30s or, early 40s or whatever. And then a lot of movies after that aren't so good. I'm saying with the exceptions to that, they're the directors who maybe I look forward to best and maybe are in the top echelon. I think 50s and 60s is like, that's like, they have all of the backing behind studios, they're seasoned in a lot of ways. And that's kind of when they get to really stretch their muscles in most cases.
That is certainly true for Wilder and Hitchcock, who I think were both somewhere around at least late 40s to 60, where they made probably their most iconic movies, both of which were in the 1950s. Yeah. I don't know about now how much that, well, like Wes Anderson, like to me, Wes Anderson is an example of someone who is, I don't know. I mean, he's consistently good. I wasn't that crazy about French Dispatch. Did you see French Dispatch, Tim?
Yeah, I liked it. I'm not sure if we did that big old podcast, but that's on my list.
Yeah. It's not bad. I mean, it's a cool, interesting movie, but in terms of his, I think his best movie is Royal Tenenbaums. I still would put that one the highest. And I don't know if he's gotten to that level of balance between the style and the like kind of like fullness of emotion that movie has. Because French Dispatch, for as beautiful as it is a very cold movie. Too cold in my estimation. I don't know. Maybe it worked for you more, but
I think he hit some pretty high highs in that film. I think I had the group chat before you were on it. I mentioned some of it was on the podcast of him being too intense in that film. Mm-hmm. But which might scare off. I'm not sure scare off, but might make some haters of his style.
I don't know. And then the other thing is, well, to address the other question of what directors, what is it, the ones who stay the highest, like Scorsese, what do you think it is about those guys that keeps them in the zone and continually, at least Scorsese, is there anyone who's done it as well as him and as long? I mean,
Spielberg.
I think Spielberg is up there, though. I would say he flagged a little bit in the last decade. I kind of feel like he's coming back because like West Side Story is like probably one of his best movies. and his next movie is this really personal thing that I have a hard time imagining it's not going to be great. But yeah, he's definitely had continued success for sure.
I think De Palma had more of the lore around him, but I'm not sure.
But he hasn't. He's. I don't know what his last like really great movie was. Carlito's Way, maybe. I mean,
De Palma fell off, and has never made a comeback really.
He's at a tough. Yeah, I'm still got my fingers crossed because he's not. He's like in his late 70s. He still could pull like a First Reformed, like Paul Schrader. That's a good example of someone who we were like, that guy was like in the dirt. He was like nothing, and then he comes out with maybe his best movie. I don't know. Mm-hmm. That's pretty rare for that to happen. That many bombs and then that to occur. De Palma. I feel like he kind of suffered from the thing of like not evolving maybe, or not, or maybe sometimes both, because he would do a weird movie like Redacted where he's using like home video and it's really experimental. And I mean, I thought it was really good, but no one cared about that movie and it did horribly. And his last couple movies have been, I would say, more retreads of his earlier style, but just with worse scripts and very, very low budget and sort of like a diminishment. He's definitely a filmmaker who it feels like you're watching an old person make the movie, which you don't feel like Spielberg being the same age. You don't feel that with Spielberg. You don't feel that with Scorsese.
Yeah.
You don't feel that with Ridley Scott, who's in his mid 80s,
Yeah. Well, and then, it's funny because you're obviously a massive Clint fan, but he's one who does make movies that make you feel like he is an old man, but it kind of works in some ways.
Yeah, Cry Macho. Yeah, mixed. Did you see Cry Macho too?
No. Was it good? Bad? Like,
I mean, if I was like an objective, like robot critic, it's not good, but I liked it very much and enjoyed it, and I had a good time with it. If you're watching like a late Clint Eastwood movie, I would watch The Mule or Richard Jewell, which are actually like really excellent movies.
Not Invictus.
Invictus is okay. Have you seen that?
No, yeah, I haven't seen that.
That's not super great. That's actually probably one of my least. But he's a really big anomaly where his hot streak came after he turned 60. I don't think there's anyone else.
Yeah,
as an actor or as a director?
As a director. As an actor, yeah, he was a great movie star, and for 30, 40 years. But that period after he did Unforgiven, he sort of had an uptick and then I would say peaked in his 70s. And I think he's fallen off a little bit. Like, I don't feel like he's evolved, but like we're talking about like continuing to evolve and continuing to like, stay really great. I feel like he hasn't had that second, but I mean, like, who would after, in your 80s, no director is going to have like a great, but he's continued to make really good movies. Like American Sniper is really good. And
Gran Torino is pretty good. I'm not sure you include that.
I really like Hereafter. I mean, yeah, we've done a whole thing about Clint, but and I personally, I think Richard Jewell is one of his top 3 movies, but that's, maybe that's just me.
Take.
Yeah, I don't know. I know it's not popular, not even popular with my family, but I would stand by it. I love Richard Jewell.
I mean, so Polanski is is just as old as Clint, right?
Almost, yeah. That's right.
In the same age bracket. He's still making movies, although different, right? Different kind of situation. He's not getting HBO Max releases for any of his movies. But
his movies are good. Other than that terrible thing you saw at Cannes
this year.
Based on a true story.
That was such a bad movie. Yeah.
Cameron saw. In fact, it's like the only Polanski movie you've seen from the last like 20 years, right?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Tim, I don't know if you're keeping abreast of the career of Roman Polanski, but
no, not really. I know he made the piano, right? Or the
pianist, yeah, which is amazing.
Not the piano. Different.
The piano is not a
terrible person. Yeah,
that's not a good. Yeah. Jake Campion's probably a better person, but yeah.
And then we kind of talked about him too, but Ridley Scott. I mean, these are kind of the 3 right now that I could think of that are like 90, I guess. Are they all like 88 or
mid 80s to 90?
Yeah.
Woody Allen is up there too.
Yeah, Woody Allen also.
Yeah, he's up there.
Who was the other? I still have another.
Alejandro Jodorowsky.
Jodorowsky. Actually, he's up there too. He's in his 90s.
What is he? Has he made anything recently? Jodorowsky?
2017. I haven't seen.
Oh wow.
16.
He started up making movies again like at 85. Like he didn't direct for 25 years, and I thought one of them he made was quite good, but he's hard to quantify because he's had like a weird, like he had an experimental career that lasted like 15 years, and then nothing, and then a few more. What's that, Cameron?
That's what Wilder should have done. He should have came back swinging at 85. Would have been awesome.
I would have loved to see it. I remember it was Woody Allen. I was thinking is a good example of what we're talking about, of like kind of not petering out, because he's never stopped making good movies, but there's definitely a mark between the early funny movies and then the Annie Hall to like Crimes and Misdemeanors period, where he gets a little bit more serious and he alters, he has a change. Right. And after that, I feel like he's never evolved again. There's been no third act, no further evolution of his style. And he's been kind of repeating himself over and over again to varying levels. I mean, some like Midnight in Paris is a wonderful movie.
That's a fun movie.
Great movie. But even that even that has some repetition of earlier themes and storylines and whatever he's done before. Whereas, Clint definitely, he went from an action filmmaker to like making more interesting movies. And then he's like, I'm just going to make interesting dramas. Then he entered like his Oscar, like super serious period. And he sort of continued in that vein. You
could say he didn't have trouble with the curve.
Beautiful, Tim. That was great. I've never had an in-person Tim Smith pun. That's beautiful.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's funny because we're kind of talking about the extremes of people who are, in their late 80s, early 90s to people who are in their 30s or younger. Like Bo Burnham is a good example. He was really young when he made his first. How old was he? Like 24 or whatever?
He was 20. 28.
Well,
if we're talking about 8th grade, he was 28. But if you're talking about his specials, he was like a teenager.
No, 8th grade. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously there's examples of people in their 20s, though it's pretty rare. I don't know. I feel like I'm still pinning it to the mid section. That's when I think even just by averages, that's when most people are hitting gold. I mean, I don't know. I can think of. I mean, maybe 40 is pretty good. Maybe like still has the young creative mindset, but is like a little bit more experienced. Obviously Nolan in his 40s, was excellent. So I don't know.
For someone who finds continued success outside of just a one-hit wonder, I think there could be some truth to that. I mean, if I look at my list of favorite movies ever made, you probably have like 4 or 5 maybe made by guys in their 20s, and then like a huge swath in their 30s and 40s and 50s. And I think once it gets to 60, it's definitely where it, Terrence Malick has some stuff, Clint does, but it peels off a little bit, I think.
Malick, another very interesting case of someone who is, made like, a career that 20 years before he made his second career. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's 20-year gap. So that's a little, I was also thinking about Paul Thomas Anderson as someone who I think is, he seems to have had different stanzas to his career.
He's somebody who his screen show makes him look younger than he really is. This is the stuff that he includes, because he's 50 something, but just the stuff that he films, it seems like he's in his late 30s.
Yeah, especially this movie, which is very joyful and kind of exuberant. But it does feel different than it feels similar to Boogie Nights, but there is a different sense of maturity to it. That's not the like driving, like his early movies feel like the work of like an angry young man, and definitely up until Punch Drunk Love, I think, which is kind of he's like, I'm going to dial back the scale, but not the angriness, you know. But also he's going to have a romanticism to it. It's a very interesting movie, you know. But then it's like There Will Be Blood. That's the evolution. That's his Annie Hall type of like, I'm shifting gears into something different. And then I feel like, I don't know if Phantom Thread is another shift, but definitely Licorice Pizza is another one where I'm like, where he's like, I'm going to take the pedal off the making a really serious art house movie and do something that's a little bit more fun. I mean, well, who knows where he'll go from there, but he seems like in this point of his life, a more relaxed, sort of laid back guy than he was in his 20s and 30s.
Yeah. I mean, I also feel like you do kind of get the old age maturity sometimes from some of these, especially though the young auteurs who jumped out of the gate with a, you know, like a banging movie or two, and we're kind of maybe pigeonholed in a certain way. I think Tarantino is, you know, perfect example of this, who, you know, was someone who I always thought was trying to please his audience in a lot of ways, was trying to sort of, I don't know, it was living up to an expectation of a sense. Mm-hmm. And with Once Upon a Time, it feels like his most mature movie. And you know, how old was he when he made that?
56.
Yeah. So, you know, he would have, this is at a time of his life where he's in the same way that PTA is, you know, maybe making more reflections, maybe being more, I guess, just like contending with his own career and sort of, you know, looking back and it's a lot, almost like nostalgia driven.
Well, he's an interesting example of someone who he did definitely want to appeal to his fans, but you could feel him like putting this box around himself of the type of movie I'm known for, the Tarantino movie, and then just like pushing the boundaries of that box as much as he could, up until I feel like Hateful Eight. And I feel like Once Upon a Time, I guess it kind of works in that same zone a little bit because there is the revenge element with the Manson family, but I feel like he freed himself somehow of that.
Yeah.
As much as his movies are, I mean, all his revenge movies are great. You know, I have no complaints, you know, there whatsoever, but it'll be fun to see where he goes after that. You know, Tim, do you have any other things you want to, I mean, like you always have like good questions. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? I don't know if I have any other things to say about this.
I guess something similar where you mentioned that where some directors, they move from genre to genre and shocks the audience and like kind of creates a backlash, and then people view them differently, even though that film might be good, but the whole change of it was too jarring for the audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who were you thinking of someone in particular? Or?
No, just that concept of how we view directors differently.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I'm trying to think of like who is the best example of someone who made something and people are like, fuck this. What are you doing? I mean, Scorsese even has made some movies that piss people off or been like, what the fuck is this? You know, sometimes just on, you know, religious or controversial grounds, but you know, I'm sure the people who love Taxi Driver were baffled when he pulled out New York 1 year after. Like, what the fuck? What are you doing? It's also not, in my opinion, not a very good movie.
And plenty of people, you know, loved Silence, even though, you know, other people really did not and thought it was boring and terrible.
So boring. Oh my God.
Great movie. It's a great movie. I mean, I think it's hard because a lot of the directors that we're talking about have been the sort of genre breaking in a lot of ways. We haven't really talked a lot about sort of like genre directors. I feel like we mentioned Sturgis a little bit. I feel like he had a lot of different types of movies. And I guess I can't really tell what the critical eye of his movies were. But you know, I mean, he just like a lot of those directors back then, they would direct everything under the sun. And I don't know. I imagine that was a lot easier when the studios were kind of gearing up towards like making lots of genre movies, one after the other. I think actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think the directors who, you know, will make one movie and then go off to make like Marvel movies after that. Those are always the ones that I'm personally most disappointed about, I guess. Just because it always ends up being that's kind of just what they do after that.
They get sucked back in. It's really weird how like Ryan Coogler, like, so I mean, I totally respected him. I mean, on one hand, maybe we should, you know, wait and see with the Black Panther sequel, because he's done 2 like sequels to big franchises that ended up being really, in Creed in particular, really, really good movies. But it is a little bit of a bummer. Like Taika Waititi, to me, I was like, oh, he's doing Thor. He's doing like Poirot, like do a sequel in the third movie of a franchise. And then he did a, you know, pretty interesting movie like Jojo Rabbit. But it's a little disappointing to see him. I guess he's also doing a soccer movie. So he's doing a couple different things next year. But I'm like, oh, he's doing another Thor movie. Like, you know, like how much money do you need, man? Like one Marvel movie, it seems like, yeah, maybe they're just fun to do. I don't know. But
and he's doing the Akira movie, the live action movie. Oh, that's gonna
really.
Oh no,
is it real?
Well, it's announced. I don't know. It's just on his IMDb timeline. Who knows? Yeah, I don't know, because it's there's lots of directors who will make a successful movie and then go on to just do like TV or a franchise, and just you know, sit on their stacks of cash, which, you know, is cool and all, but it's the biggest or the widest area of the funnel is in that direction.
And don't get me started on Jon Favreau. I mean, to me, that's just like one of the great tragedies that he's just doing Star Wars, and now he's doing a Boba Fett series. I'm like, oh my God, like, what are you doing, man? Like come on. I mean,
the heights of Elf to now.
Yeah, the heights of Elf. I mean, my opinion, and also I just think Chef. To me, he's like someone who in like the 1970s, a movie like Chef would have propelled him to like be a great, you know, practitioner of like interesting character movies. And he's a great writer too. Like Swingers is really good.
He wrote Swingers.
Yeah. Right. And you know, he's a solid. I mean, I really like Iron Man too, but you know, but he's I like Iron Man also. Iron Man 2.
Yeah, not Iron Man 2.
Not so great. But he's a perfect example of someone, other than maybe David Ayer, probably one of the most disappointing filmographies. Because like, oh God, David Ayer.
Oh man. Yeah.
Those were like original movies too. Yeah. I don't know what happened with that guy.
That's so funny. Now that we're mentioning all these guys who like maybe had the potential of being auteurs in the way that, you know, we see others, because I think Ayer's movies are, you know, his early couple are just like stamped with a lot of style and you know, awesome just general filmmaking.
But End of Watching Fury, certainly.
Yeah. But it just really didn't go so well for him.
And it's weird too, because he wrote those movies. Like he's a good, talented writer. Trying to remember who else I was thinking who like made something that pissed me off. I was thinking of Cuarón, how everyone loved Roma, and we're like, oh, he's jumped to the new level, and I was like, this sucks, man.
I liked Roma.
Did you though?
Yeah, I did.
It looks cool, I guess, but
it looks nice.
He did Gravity, right?
Yeah, Gravity's all right.
I like Gravity.
Yeah, he's not.
Well, I mean, his best is Children of Men. So.
He's a guy who has. By the way, this discussion we're having also kind of leads into that game we were talking about the other. We're having dinner.
Yeah. That's what I was going to bring up.
Yeah. We were talking about the sort of thing of looking at different directors' filmographies, and like if you could cut away the entire filmography except for one 10-year period, which 10-year period would you pick? And like, I was gonna say Corona is an easy one. It's 2001 to 2011. Like it's the Tu Mama Tambien to Children of Men easily. What do you say?
I was gonna say some joke, but it's okay.
Okay.
I was gonna say W. Griffiths 1914.
Yeah, I mean Griffith. I would actually keep. I know I'm the only one who would say this, but
the Griffith expert.
Yeah. but I would actually only keep probably 1903 to 1913. That's probably where I would put it.
How do you actually know that? I've seen one movie from before 1920.
He did a lot of shorts in the early days that were really important and really influential that I think should be kept, just in terms of a legacy wise.
Well, first of all, it's just amazing you know this, Cameron, but also that led me to think of a perfect example of someone who not only had just like one 10-year period, but he never did anything else, was Buster Keaton. Like Buster Keaton had this like insane run of like amazing movies in the 20s. And he was like only 30 and he never made anything else the rest of his life. And he would show up in movies and he was really funny, but it's like after the silent era, he had nothing. And that's actually, that might be even bigger tragedy than Wilder in terms of misled potential, because he was lived to be quite old. But yeah, I don't know what Scorsese would be the hardest to pick. What like which period would you pick? 10-year period would you pick of Scorsese, Tim?
Me, my favorite movie from him is Taxi Driver. And so that decade, the 70s.
Yeah.
Well,
it's hard, man, because the 70s you get Taxi Driver, Mean Streets, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, and then
the 80s were a little.
If you go up to Raging Bull, that would be 70 to 80.
That would be pretty solid. I mean, that would be better than most people.
Definitely.
But he, other than I would say the 2000s, like if you pick the 2000s for Scorsese, I would have your head examined, because I like really Gangs of New York and The Departed, and I like The Aviator, but like, I don't know. Honestly, I might go with the last decade. I honestly think, even with not liking Silence, the Hugo, Shutter Island, it's such a variety of movies too. Hugo, Shutter Island, Wolf of Wall Street, and Irishman is just
and Silence.
Yeah, that's just insane. And also he did a documentary about Fran Lebowitz. But like the 90s too, you'd be losing the Goodfellas, Bring Out the Dead period. And
well, in both of those lists, we would cap it off before the 90s. I mean, I don't know. That's tough, because he has in the 80s he has Raging Bull, King of Comedy, Last Temptation, and then
After
Goodfellas in 90, and then Cape Fear in 91.
Cape Fear, of course.
So, I mean, that's still a killer decade there. And if you went just from, you'd have to cut off either Raging Bull or Cape Fear. But if you went from Raging Bull to Goodfellas,
he's one of the hardest, because his are my favorites by him are like Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, The Irishman. Like it's very spread out.
Yeah. What do you think about Tarantino? Would you pick 90s Tarantino, or would you pick I
guess I would have to do
recent Tarantino?
Oh shit. I think I would have to do because I think at the end of the day, I like Pulp Fiction and Jackie Brown as much or more than Once Upon a Time. But those are definitely like my favorites of him. What do you about you, Tim?
What did he do in 2000s?
Kill Bill in 03, 04, and then he did Death Proof in 07, Inglourious Bastards 09, and then Django 2012.
Yeah, probably the 90s.
Yeah. I would go from Reservoir Dogs to, what was that, 96?
I would probably go to 94 to 90 to 04, because I like the Kill Bill movies more than Reservoir Dogs. It was much easier before Once Upon a Time came out. Kubrick is another interesting one. He's a guy who sustained, and
I think he might have the best track record in terms of straight kills. I mean, He's got a handful in the early days that aren't the best, but basically in the height of his career, he was just killing it every time. But he didn't have that many movies too. So it was kind of tougher.
I definitely love I'm a big like early guy, like The Killing and
Spartacus.
Spartacus. I don't know, but Paths of Glory and Doctor Strangelove are my favorites by him.
I like Doctor Strangelove. It's a fun movie.
It's so great.
Would you do 60 or would you do 56 to 66?
I don't know. I haven't seen the one before The Killing, so I'm not sure exactly.
Fear and Desire.
It would be whatever encompasses 57 and 64, because I don't care about 2001. I don't care about whatever. But I do like Eyes Wide Shut. Eyes Wide Shut is probably my third favorite.
I would do probably 62 to 71.
Lolita,
Dr. Clockwork Orange, and Space Odyssey.
I've never seen Lolita. I don't like 2001. I think that makes me some kind of a pariah in the film community, because I don't know. I assume you do, though.
Yeah, it's stunning visually.
It is. There's no denying that. But also it puts me asleep.
It's kind of hard because after the 70s, he made a movie every like 10 years. So you can, if you pick
just
like
get Eyes Wide Shut, you just get Full Metal Jacket. Yeah,
that's how I fall asleep with Inception. It's just boring.
Shots fired.
I kind of wonder if I might pick the 80s still, because I love The Shining and Full Metal Jacket.
You like Full Metal Jacket?
Those are the only two movies that I get.
Yeah,
but I wonder.
We got to do this on the official podcast. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's why we're doing it here.
Well, Tim has brought up the Nolan thing in a rather hostile manner.
Yeah.
So we should get into Nolan. You don't like Inception, Tim?
I don't like Nolan.
Oh my God. Nolan's like my probably second favorite filmmaker.
I'm sorry to hurt you.
No, that's okay. It's all right.
I know we've had this fight before.
I've never talked to Tim
many
about
a time.
Yeah.
Many a times.
He just has a weird fetish with time, and that's all he's famous for.
That's not true. I think his movies are just fun. I mean, to me, they're just. I don't even know if I think his movies are that intelligent, because as I've got older, I'm like, these are like a movie, like a dumb guy making what his idea of a smart person's movie is. But to me, that's not a problem. That's a positive. Like you watch The Dark Knight, and those are like bozo movies, but they're as entertaining as anything ever made, including The Dark Knight Rises.
Well, I would go Memento to Inception personally. So,
ooh, yeah.
That's what I would do.
But I haven't seen Dunkirk.
Well, really?
Dunkirk is amazing.
I don't like war movies.
That's such a good movie.
Oh, really? Well, you might like Dunkirk though, because it's probably one of the best war movies like ever. I tend to like, I find in genres, even if I don't like them that much, if it's like the best one though. Yeah, you should see Dunkirk. It's great. Yeah. Did you get anything out of Tenet, Tim? Me and Cameron disagree about Tenet.
Everything is useless in that movie. So that's how I feel.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun, Jan. It's
no, it was actually fine. I think it's similar with J.J. Abrams and The Mystery. Who cares? But
yeah, I don't care about the intelligent, the logic of it. I mean, it's ludicrous, but
it's always fun to see his regulars like Michael Caine in there. Random spot. Yeah,
I hope John David Washington becomes a regular, because I think he's fantastic as the lead in that.
Yeah, and then he continues his hot streak. Patterson,
what? Wait, what are you talking about?
He means Robert Pattinson.
Oh, Pattinson, right.
Pattinson, sorry, Patterson. Yeah,
I was thinking about like the Adam Driver movie. I was like, what? What's the connection here? Yeah. Robert Pattinson he's on fire, man. Did you guys see the Batman trailer?
Yeah, in West Side Story when we were.
Oh my God! Well, there's like a new one, like
when he meets Catwoman.
Yeah, about Catwoman. that looks pretty fucking great. I don't know. I mean, I'm not like even a big like clamoring for a new Batman, but it looks cool, man.
So what would you pick for Nolan?
Oh, definitely Dark Knight to Dunkirk. That's a nice, perfect 10-year. I mean, I would be sad to lose Memento. I mean, I like Insomnia and The Prestige, but all the ones I like love rewatching, except for Tenet. I would lose Tenet, which is fun to rewatch, even though it's probably like his worst movie. But yeah, all the my favorite Nolans are definitely Inception, Dark Knight, Interstellar, and Dunkirk.
Yeah, so I would definitely be sad to lose Interstellar and Dunkirk in mine, but I think mine's the right call, personally.
I think Interstellar would be more engaging if it was like 30 minutes shorter.
I don't know, man. How can you get more engaging than all of space and time and love conquering all? I mean, that's about as engaging as I can get. I think
you're romantic. That's why.
It's very romantic, but it's a beautiful movie. I mean, you have to let go of like it with Nolan of any kind of semblance of sense or logic, or just like he's actually, even though he seems cold and his movies seem to be, he's actually very like hard on his sleeve kind of filmmaker. And actually, if you look at like the end of The Dark Knight, which you don't think of as a sentimental movie, it's actually very open-hearted and very kind of emotionally driven.
The poor man's Terrence Malick.
I don't know what that means. Terrence Malick also, I mean, other than they're both very, I would say, very sincere filmmakers. Terrence Malick, I don't know.
So let's throw in a very difficult one for me and you, Juzo.
Okay, who?
Godard. What decade would you pick?
Oh, I would pick the 40s to the 50s. So before he's making films,
when he was just writing about film.
Yeah. I'd pick the 2030s to the 2040s when he'll be
no. I mean, seriously.
Well, obviously, it would have to be the 60s, right, or whatever. Is Breathless 1960?
It's 1960.
Yeah, I haven't seen really any of his movies between Weekend and Goodbye to Language, so I really.
He's still making movies.
Yeah. I saw his last couple movies. The last one was probably the worst film I've ever seen.
The Image Book.
Yeah, Image Book. That was complete wash.
Well, we did watch the Rolling Stones' "Sympathy for the Devil," which was terrible.
For him, that's one of his better movies. I mean,
1968. So if you picked from 60, you'd be getting Breathless, Contempt, Alphaville, Masculine Feminine, which is my favorite of his movies. So.
Oh, really? I haven't seen that one. My Life to Live.
But you'd also be getting La Chinoise and
Weekend. I remember liking Weekend because it was so like insane. But I don't think he's probably ever made a good movie.
I agree.
I know. 100%. Tim, are you a big Godard? You were going to say something, Tim. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I know who he is. I think I have some of his movies, but I just don't have time to watch them.
He said Vive sa vie, which my Life to Live.
Okay.
That was also pretty good too, but that's like 63 or whatever.
I thought it was good. I watched it again. It's actually a piece of garbage. But I don't.
All right, you and Isaac should just do a podcast talking crap about the French.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. I like some of their. I like Truffaut, okay, but I don't know. Very easy to make fun of Godard, certainly. Bergman. I've only seen like 5 of his movies, so it's,
I don't have enough volume for Bergman.
I guess technically this game really you have to be like a really like completist. You know, it's not a very accessible. You know, I'm gonna be like, oh, which Linklater movies? You guys would be like, I don't know.
Oh, I don't like Linklater either. But except the trilogy, the Sunset trilogy is amazing.
Oh my god! Well, okay. So you do like him then?
Yeah, I like the majority of his movies.
What about Boyhood?
At the time, I liked it, but now, I have no. I guess the music was good. I like.
Wait a second. Okay, wait, hold on.
Boy is wonderful.
You said that about another movie too, didn't you? Say that about something else?
The
that
music
at the time,
maybe?
no. That at the time you liked it, but now thinking about it, you don't.
Yeah, at the time, I don't know.
Okay, is this like a retroactive? Like you think about what your feelings were at the time, or is this like you watched it again and then you now feel differently about it?
Based on me thinking about it and my ever-changing emotions. Where I guess I'm not. No.
I disavow this.
I just think movies become
way
uncool.
Evaluating.
You know, there's certain movies. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
I'll explain. I guess the times where I'm watching those movies, they connect with me more. And when I go back, there's no connection. And so I'd like them less. And that helps my case. Where there's no connection for me, so I don't enjoy them as much as when I did watch them.
Mm.
It is true that Boyhood, when it came out, Tim, you're the same age as us, right?
I'm 28.
Okay.
No,
Well,
I'm 25.
okay. Yeah. Basically same age. So you when Boyhood came out, it was the end of that movie was almost perfectly in sync with where we were, you know, going off to college, that sort of thing. I don't know if it would make the same. I would think it would, because I think it's a great film but I haven't actually seen it in a little while. I haven't seen it in about 5 years. But it's totally fair that as you get older, certain things hit you differently. I was watching Minority Report yesterday. That's what my family decided to do for New Year's. And that movie, there were things about it that I appreciate even more than I ever did. Like, just one of the things I appreciated was just how like kind of silly it is. Like when they're like crashing through people's homes, and you know, there's a part where like a car gets built around Tom Cruise and then he drives it away, where I was like almost like falling out of my chair laughing. And then there's also things about it where I was a little bit like, this is maybe, you know, if I saw this for the first time, maybe I would be a little less enamored with, you know, for me, Minority Report is probably my first or second favorite Spielberg movie. I consider it to be like a masterpiece, but there are probably things, you know, maybe if I didn't have a nostalgic connection or a connection to it being a seminal film. And Inception is the same way. Inception, I watch certain things in that and I'm going like, Nolan has actually become a much better action filmmaker. Like if you look at some of the action scenes in Inception, they're not actually as good as some of the ones in Tenet. But my connection to that movie is so much that I overlook things, and sometimes my opinion just, you know, changes, and I'm like, maybe I don't love this movie that I thought. One I had last year that was really kind of disheartening was American Hustle, which when that came out, I thought was like so awesome. And I probably hadn't seen any Scorsese movies. That's like 9 years ago now. And I was so like enamored with that movie. And I saw it again. I was like, this is like very pedestrian. Like I just did not dig it in the same way. And
I remember being kind of mixed on that movie. And you really liking it. But I liked his other, the movie before, and you
Silver
didn't
Linings.
like that movie.
No. It's good. I know. I've always liked Silver Linings. I just don't like it as much, though. Maybe I would. I don't know. Maybe we could do a David O. Russell retrospective. How's that for?
We would have like 3
topic.
movies or whatever. So I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. So I have 2 for you that are going to be very difficult. Actually, difficult for both of us.
Okay.
1, Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
2, David Fincher. So who do we want to tackle first? Because both of them, I think, are impossible choices.
Let's start with Spielberg.
Okay, so
Spielberg, yeah.
I think this is extremely difficult. I think you have to keep 1993 in whatever choice you make. I think you
is that Jurassic Park.
Schindler's List. Jurassic
93
Park.
is Schindler's List. Jurassic Park.
That's right. Yeah.
And unfortunately, that means you lose. You definitely lose Jaws, and you definitely lose Indiana Jones and E.T.
You could get Last Crusade, which I actually
you could get Last Crusade,
one,
yeah. But you're missing Raiders. You get Temple of Doom if you go 80 to or 84 to 94.
When does 1941 start? When's that release? No.
79.
Okay. 79 to 89.
Nah. 1941.
So to me, the choice is either 93 to 2003, which I think is pretty good. I think that might be the best one, or 84 to 94, 93 or whatever.
What if I do 05? What if I do 05 to 2015? So then I get Bridge of Spies in Munich.
I think that's the worst option.
Well, not Bridge of Spies again.
I know, right? Yeah. But if you go 93, I wouldn't actually do that, but if you go 93 to 03, you keep Minority Report.
Okay.
You keep Catch Me If You Can.
That's such an underrated movie.
Great movie.
You keep Saving Private Ryan.
No one cares about Amistad, but yeah. Okay, and then it would be tough for me because E.T. is probably my favorite, though. Again, that's a childhood thing, But that's my number one at the moment. But I don't think I would do 81, 83, or 82 through 92 because that'd be only like E.T. and Last Crusade. Yeah. I think probably the best one would be 93 to 03 for me, or 02, because then you get my second and third fit. You get Schindler's List, Minority Report, and also Private Ryan and Catch Me If You Can are really good, and AI is pretty good.
You're missing the Terminal in that 10-year run.
Yeah, I would be sad. I really like the Terminal. Is actually kind of one of my favorites. I like that movie a lot.
That's a great movie.
Oh, you've seen it? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
A very underseen movie, but that's. Have you seen that, Cameron?
No.
That's a great. You know what it kind of reminds me of? It's like a Jacques Tati. It's a little like Chaplin-esque, a little Jacques Tati kind of thing. That's wonderful. I almost was thinking when you first said Spielberg, I was gonna go 02 to 2012 because I wanted to get Munich. I just saw Munich again, and Munich is unbelievably great. You get Crystal Skull, whatever. And then you'd also get, Lincoln and Tintin, which I like quite a bit, but probably better to get Schindler's. I would go 02 in terms of like what I want to watch. I would go 02, like for just my own pleasure, because I don't like get much pleasure out of watching Schindler or Private Ryan.
Yeah,
but I don't know. Tim, did you?
What about 11 to 21? And
that's not his worst
Side Story. It's not bad. It wouldn't be terrible.
You really actually can't miss too badly. That you
get the Post. You have to keep the Post. So that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Was the Post good, bad, or
no? It was terrible.
It's bad. So I would say it's the only it's only less than okay movie he's made in the last 25 years, 20 or at least 24 years.
Because the last movie I seen from him was Bridge of Spies. Was the newest one.
Really? You haven't seen anything since Bridge of Spies?
No.
I wouldn't do 2011 through 2021, but who knows? Maybe Fabelmans will be really great, and then I'd have to reassess. He is one where you probably can't lay a 10-year period where you don't catch at least one great, a great Jaws or Close Encounters or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then let's do Fincher.
Wait, did Tim say his?
No.
Oh yeah, Tim.
I had a couple more questions on David Lynch, on a couple more things on Spielberg. So, what is Tintin hated or loved?
I would say
I like Tintin.
It's definitely the consensus is liked, and I really like it.
Okay,
it's a great action set pieces, very fun, playful, kind of in the Raiders vein, I would say.
Okay, because I liked it, but every time I hear people talk about it, I hear there's like some disdain for it.
Oh yeah, there was someone who did an essay, like this kind of backhanded essay about it, and why did they say they didn't like it? It was some film channel I follow. It was like Now You See It or something like that, and I was like, bullshit, man. This is a great movie. It's probably not in my like top 10 Spielberg, but it's really. I put it in like the Jurassic Park kind of zone of just like really fun, well-made entertainment.
I'll probably do 87 to 97.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you a big Empire of the Sun guy?
I haven't seen it, but I don't like Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, okay.
So you just want to cut it out?
You're just cutting it out.
Okay, fine. I'll do Saving Private Ryan to get a little bit more club from you guys.
Well,
Is it because you
no,
don't
if
like war movies?
Well, if you don't like Private Ryan, it's better to get. I mean, Empire of the Sun is kind of a war movie too, but.
Yeah, I like Hook. I know Hook's not a great movie, but
Hook is terrible. But that's a kid thing.
Favorite.
That's a kid thing. Is you guys probably grew up with Hook, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I saw it when I was like 20 years old. And it means nothing to me, but it's
Jurassic Park's fun. So
yeah, Jurassic Park's great.
Or Jaws. Jaws is my favorite from his movies.
I don't think Cameron's completely right in saying you have to have Schindler's List. Like, I don't know if that's really.
No, I think he's talking about that year.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the Minority Report Catch Me If You Can year is as good or better than the Schindler's List Jurassic Park. I mean, that's a whole nother podcast. What is the best Spielberg doubleheader year? Because he's done like literally 6 of them. And,
2011.
War Horse, Tintin.
97.
2005. Munich.
97 is horrible.
No, sorry.
Yeah. Munich and War of the Worlds. That's not bad.
Yeah.
97 is terrible. It's Amistad and Lost World. That's pretty horrible. And then 89 he did Always and which is terrible. The Last Crusade is fantastic. Well, Fincher, are we counting Mindhunter as Fincher or not?
Yeah, we can.
What are the years of Mindhunter? Mindhunter's 17 and 19.
Yeah. Seems like it's a big Fincher movie, essentially.
Oh, I know what I'd do. I would do 07 to 2017 because then I get Mindhunter season 1 and I get Zodiac. And then Social Network is my favorite.
Yeah.
Gone Girl is actually I've really enjoyed recently, and I love Dragon Tattoo. Benjamin Button is whatever, but it's fine.
This is so difficult for me because.
But yeah, it would kill me to drop 7 in Fight Club. I mean, that would suck a lot.
7. For me, I mean, 7 kind of changed my life in a lot of ways. So I don't know if I can give it up. I love that movie so much, dude. It's so good.
How did it change your life for better?
It changed my life.
He found his calling. Yeah.
To become Kevin Spacey in that movie. Yeah.
Kevin Spacey, period.
Then or now?
No, in that movie.
Okay.
But 95 to 2005 is not the best of his, that he's got to offer. I don't think. Unfortunately,
he was kind of infrequent, right? Like he did.
Yeah, I mean, he did
7 The Game, Fight Club, and then it's like 3 years, then Panic Room, and then 5 years, and then Zodiac.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if you did 95 to 05, you'd still have that's still like 4 pretty awesome movies.
Yeah, no, it's a very solid, but it's hard because I wish I could get Zodiac in with 7. If I could push Zodiac back 2 years or whatever, right. that would be mine.
I think mine is the better call because you get 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5. At least you get 4 great movies, including my favorite one, and you get a great TV. Like because I just love the first season of Mindhunters is incredible. And of course, 7. I mean, 7 is like my second favorite movie by him, so that would be definitely a bummer. But
yeah, and you'd also get House of Cards that first season.
Well, I don't think I don't really count House of Cards because he wasn't like he just kicked it off. He wasn't the guy.
Yeah.
Everyone says it's Mindhunter. He's like in the room. He's the showrunner.
Well, I mean, his first movie definitely did not do very good.
Alien, yes, and it's not super.
And for first-time directors, is that hard to come back from, or is that?
I would imagine
for something that bad, like
especially if it's like a big movie. That's kind of an unusual thing. Like he's given a giant movie. I think that was just because he had a huge MTV career. And that's why he gets a big sequel. Because that's sort of the opposite of how it normally happens. Normally you do a 7 and a Fight Club, and then they'd be like, hey, or especially do 7 and then do a sequel nowadays. But I mean, Alien 3 isn't a horrible movie. It's kind of enjoyable from what I remember. But yeah, it's not essential Fincher by any stretch.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Fincher though is that he had like an extensive music video career in the 80s, way before before he did anything in film. So
I guess he had some experience then, or there's some track record.
And I think every now and then he does a music video. It's been a while, but every now and then he will do a music video.
He does a lot of commercials. I actually kind of like his commercials.
Yeah.
In fact, all his shorts and music videos are better than his last movie, Mank. But that's just my opinion.
Okay, I think mine would be 2010, 2020. Oh no, I want to include the one that's coming up because I'm not sure. The Killer in 2022.
Yeah, that sounds very promising actually, because it's his Seven. It's the guy who wrote Seven. And it's his wheelhouse. It's about a contract killer or something like that. It's not him doing an imitation of someone else's style, like with
going back to his roots.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, I'm doing 2010, 2020.
Okay.
Well, you're not getting the killer either way. So
he's getting Mank, and that's what's important.
I did 2014, 2022.
And then you lose the Social Network.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Hopefully, this next decade is a great one for him. He was one that obviously, like, we both kind of were pretty disappointed with Mank, but he was one that, in my mind, had basically never made a bad movie. I mean, not exactly, obviously, but he pretty much had one of the highest track records, along with Nolan, and both of them put out just garbage movies last year. So
incorrect, Cameron. Incorrect.
So, whatever. It is what it is.
Tenet is Nolan at his.
Everybody's
at his
disappointing
finest.
me. Disappointing me.
Well, Tim, I don't know if you need to go or how long we've been sitting
Just 2
here.
hours.
Is it we going 2 hours? Holy shit! I want to let you guys go and before I keep rambling on and on. But it's great to talk to you finally, Tim.
Yeah, it's good.
And
meeting you in the flesh.
Over the screen. I'll take care. Have a good night.
Yeah,
and hope to talk to you guys again some other time soon. So
yeah, that's it.
All right,
guys.
Have a good one.
Good night.